Hi there, Randy Green here, video 4. Okay, so I'm not going to touch ground with things today that will make you feel more happy. But again, my assessment is, as it is with everything, you need to know what you're dealing with before you can find a cure, right? So we are doing what the doctors do. We are turning every stone to figure out what is the ailment and what is causing this ailment and what will then be the solution, especially if you have something that you have a lot of different symptoms, but it's not one single thing. It's not really known. It's kind of an unknown disease that we are dealing with here, just to use that expression. We have a patient that has some weird autoimmune symptoms, and in that are showing signs of other things that are going wrong, but we don't really know what it is. So we have to work from one end to another to figure out what it is by trial and error or by trying to activate something. And if that works, then that's the solution. And if it doesn't work, we'll find another thing to work with. So that's one aspect of where we're going. Another one is to understand the circumstances that we're in and the fatigue that humans technically have and why humans have that type of fatigue. So that's also part of it. So anyways, as always, I'm just going to talk a little bit here and there and everywhere. And at the end, you'll probably get the pattern of what I'm here presenting to you. So let us just start. We are two main lines we're running here. We are running base program, normal human perception of change. That's just one level of it. And I don't know how many of you have actually tried to instigate real changes with a group of people. Many of you probably tried the changes with yourself. Just think about how a great success have you now implemented 1 hour of exercise every day. What type of exercise are you doing and how much convincing does it take you to get that 1 hour done every day? Have you peaked where you kind of feel, yeah, this is really what I want to do? Or are you under prioritizing it every time? And then when you do it, you just kind of do it with that kind of incitement and incitement and not this whole kind of, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. This is so fun. I love doing it. Your body is not really, nah, it's too hot. No, I'm too tired. No this, no that, whatever. All of these parasitic little voices that are still part of our molecular structure telling us why we should not exercise, because these fourth dimensional parasites, they don't like the exercise. They don't like the extra work. They don't like anything. So that's part of the fourth cycle. We are having humans on our planet that are more third cycle. They don't have that issue. And we are having humans that are more fifth cycle. They don't have that issue either because they have conquered space a long time ago. But the laggards of the fourth cycle are the ones we had issues with already back in the holographic metaverse. So that's why they have now become the slugs and the energetic parasites, because that's what they are. They are lethargic. So they are just like little worms that don't want to do anything. They just want to get fed with energy without having to do anything for it. And eventually they have lost the ability to have arms and legs and heads and whatever, just being a slug with a mouth. They're just going to suck energy. So that's all that they need. That's their prime directive, to put it that way. That's what they are, per consciousness. And that's why over the course of time, they have become so as well. And they're linked up to the original TGs, or technologically enhanced genetics, because they're made of that. And then they have a cube attached to them. And later on, they were attached to what we call, what has become the elementals in the racial grids of the fourth cycle. So that's what they have become. They used to be humans that were linked up that way, but now they just become slugs and they have become part of our energy system. Sometimes inserted, other times literally, they are our karma. They are the karmic imprint, because these slugs used to be something else, but has blended with us over the course of time, either as past life versions of ourselves, which is not nice to think of, and other solutions that comes with that. So The only merciful thing with these slugs is to literally say, yeah, you are in your end stage of your evolutionary process. So you know what next step for you will be in the underworld, because you'll be drawn down to the elemental. Because what are the elementals? They are technically the conglomerate of the slugs, that the genetics from the slugs that are then pulled into the racial grids. Once the technology ceases to exist, the slug will begin to evaporate, and then what's left will be drawn into that elemental, and they will just grow larger and larger and larger, and then they'll feed the other slugs that are connected to the same elementals, because we are all connected to collective elementals, so to speak, of our reality. So that's where that one goes. And of course, the Greys have a huge interest in the elementals, because they think that if they utilize the slugs, they will get the genetics that are stored in the elementals. So of course, that's also some of the things that they are doing. That's one of the reasons why they have created so much distortion in humanity as part of the event program. Try to get connected to the elementals so that they could harness their consciousness units that are stored in these elemental beings. But they have not really succeeded well. Instead, they have just risen up more underworld energies, right, as we know, alongside with the Dark Avatar Collective that has an interest in rising that up to the surface and into humans, so they can possess humans. Because if humans are imbued with underworld energies, well, it's easy for a Dark One to step in and take over the human form. As long as it's full of slugs, they're not interested. I wouldn't be either. Slugs are nasty. So who would want to go into that if you don't have that as a core issue, but more have a core issue with what we call old Atlantean technology and old Atlantean fallen ways of behaving. So that is something entirely else. Okay. That's not where I want to go, just to put things in perspective. We have two things going on here. We are having, just from a normal human angle, of why is it so difficult to instigate changes? And we're just having one right now. We are here in July 2022, and we remembered, at least some of us do, a couple of years, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, can't remember when, not particularly precise, right? But we have heard Greta Thunberg, as it's called in English. She came as an admissor, what do you call it? An advocate, a spokesperson, I forgot the English word, a spokesperson for the Greys. She's a hybrid. They came from the Greys and they told humans, your world is on fire. If you don't change your way now, you will cease to exist and everything will go south. What did people do? She was invited to the different councils and she spoke, and everybody's going, oh, that's amazing. She's only 14 and she's so fucking clever. I was just as clever when I was 14. When I was 14, I was out protesting. I was doing peace marches and I was being politically active. So that's not a big thing. But there was this hype about it. And what I kind of think, why was there this hype about it when nobody took action? Did it change anything? No. So what was the plot? Right? What was the plot of that one, including the different protests that we have had over the course of time, including the ones I had when I was young? Do they work? Not at all. Of course, we are putting out our voice there and say, I don't agree with that, which is good. But that taught me that, yeah, you can't really change the system from the outside. You have to go in and become part of the system, and then you can change the system from within. The problem is you have to educate yourself a lot. You have to take a lot of formal education, both formal education, self-education, and you have to learn a lot of new skills. It takes a lot of work. And sometimes we see that quite a lot. The people that are idealists, once they get into the system, they get sucked dry by the system. They get consumed by the system, and they forget why they're doing what they're doing. They forget what they're trying to change. And the more they get into the system, the more they discover that is a complex maze. It's not just one maze. It is 1,000 mazes upon each other that you have to learn to navigate in to get anything done. And the ones you thought were actually there to make a better world, you'll discover that, yeah, they're just there for their career, their personal drivers and incentives, and why they're doing this because they want to feel smart and beautiful and whatever, as we're seeing it with the battle to become the new prime minister in England, which is ridiculous. Everything is ridiculous when it comes to who is the head of governments right now. So the political system has broken down a long time ago. And to jump out of that base program, yeah, I got that information from the Niburians back in 2018 when they told me that they would begin to implement the flower of doom, as they called it, as I talked about the matrix of change, which would change health industry, which would change the political system, which would change the financial system, and which would eventually change our whole environment, which of course goes with a lot of insertion of alien technology, which humans would be the proponents for. So and I'm seeing it unfolding. And you can of course say, well, you got that information, so therefore you're seeing it through the glasses of that information. And you might be right, but for me, it's kind of, I kind of get that. And I get the different factions that are instigating the different moves to counter some of the dark factions when they're trying to rise up the old cyclic energies from the old racial grids, which causes disease and infection and ill-mindedness and possessions and all sorts of weird stuff, which we are seeing as weird autoimmune diseases and pandemics and crashes of political systems, because the politicians are no longer really politicians. They are something else, right? If your eyes to see with, you can see some of them almost have horns. And then we are having the whole issue with heat waves, which is also a side effect of underworld energies rising up, because the old gates are opening up into our reality field. And that creates an enormous amount of distortion. And distortion equals heat, because that's kinetic energy. Then the system, our planet, begins to try and transform itself. And that is what creates the heat. And at the same time, we're having the sun that's breaking down, which is breaking down our magnetic field. So the energies are coming in from the galactic realms, which again pushes our magnetic field and planet into an attempt to try and stabilize itself, homeostasis system, which then creates more heat and more kinetic energy. So it's not just the pollution, but that does not help the gas houses, greenhouse gases that are up there. They are definitely not helping, because all of the heat that's being produced cannot escape our system. It's stuck because of the greenhouse gases, methane and carbon dioxide. So that's the problem that we're having here. So to create the solutions, we need to think in a completely different way. So to go back to the base program, people don't know this, right? They don't believe in underworld forces. They don't believe in dark avatar collectives. They don't believe in possessions of humans. They don't believe in that disease has its root in old racial grids and are connected to elementals or underworld beings. They don't believe any of these things, because that's what they did in the Middle Ages, right? And people were so stupid in the Middle Ages. So therefore, of course, we are nothing like that. We are so clever. We're so technologically driven. And yes, it's amazing that young Greta girl can come up and say things like that, but we know better, right? I think that's something that kind of went through the heads of these grown-ups, old world order people of these institutions, because they are the old world order. I will agree on that one. And they are so stuck in their old insectoid ways of doing stuff, avian insectoid ways, being part of the old world order program. Yeah, we got this. But there is another fact that must be played in here. And that's the one I want to go into. I've got two different analogies I want to present to you, which will push you into the line of thought. You need a push to get out of your belief system. Because if I ask you on the top of your head, you will have all the right political understandings of what needs to be done, but you don't really have the practical solutions to how to solve these issues, because you are just ideology. You are an idealist. You have your ideology of, yeah, this is what it should be. And many of you will have long, beautiful discussions about what could be done and what should be done and all of these things. And in the end, you will point at the governments and the different CEOs and businesses. It's their fault. If only they would change, then the world would be a better place. And then you're off the hook, right? That's how people do. We're hearing that on YouTube. We're hearing so many people saying so many things. Does it change anything at all, or is it just a waste of breath? And I would say to a certain degree, yes, information definitely makes a change, but it doesn't make a change if it's not implemented into some action. And I'm not here talking about protesting and rallying and doing whatever they're doing around the world where they're overturning governments. And we've seen that again and again. They overturn the government, and what comes in instead, because of the chaos in the country, the sitting, whoever comes in, the the president, we have the Sri Lanka thing, the president that was elected, he has fled. We've seen that many times before. Then there comes someone who is kind of constituted into being a president, the vice president taking over because the elected one has fled. And then you have that one that comes in by, you would call it the Amendment 25 in the US, right? So you kind of come in because the sitting president is no longer capable of performing his task. So therefore the vice president is instituted or constituted or put in place instead. He's sworn in, right? So he takes over. And what does he or she does, because it doesn't have to be a he, it could be a she as well. They would go in and say, well, we are in a state of emergency right now. So therefore we overrule all political, governmental, democratic systems. And by that, I'm allowed to make decrees, as we've seen it in the US as well, where the president are just writing out different presidential decrees or making laws or shutting things down. It's force majeure. We are under chaos conditions. So therefore we can put in the military and yada, yada, yada. And before you know it, you have a tyranny. That's how it goes. It's done that so many times, especially in these countries that are run by more, the factions there are more aligned with what we call the Orion Collective. They're using people, the fourth cycle benevolent ants, to go up against their government so that they get their democratic processes put out of play. So we'll see more of that. And with heat waves and starvation and lack of water and lack of food and lack of oil and lack of gas and lack of blah, 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 blah. You see where I'm going, right? So that's just a fact. So that is what we can see coming. And that's part of the dystopian future that the dark forces are playing for. So unless we are beginning to really be on top of this game and understanding that these critters of the fourth dimension, the parasites, the underworld, second cycle or second dimension, you choose yourself, entities, they have a huge control of humanity, and that will grow from 2025 until 2034. And whoever will stand there and having some remaining sense of sensibility and soundness, they will be the ones that will continue our society. And the transformative powers, the transhuman powers, they are running for exactly that transformation that will happen, where people will then, because of all the chaos, they will literally just say, oh yeah, let's do the technology, let's begin to do CRISPR, let's begin to weed out the different types of DNA, let's begin to seclude certain groups of people, let's build walls, and let's do this and that, whatever. And before we know of it, we have another type of dystopian future. So that's what we are up against, seriously. And those of you who have not seen this yet, you really need to go down and look yourself in the mirror and say, now you really wake up, because this is going to go as bad as it can. So that's the first step. You need to align yourself with as a change maker. This is not going to get better. This is not just going to wear off, as we heard with the weather changes. I remember 10 years ago, they say, oh yeah, that'll first be in the 23rd century or blah, blah, blah. We have a lot of time. We just need to do it slowly, small changes here and there and yada, 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 yada. And I just thought, yeah, it will hit us within the next 5 to 10 years and you'll be so fucking unprepared. And once it hits, it will be too fucking late. And we had the last call out with Greta Thunberg, because that is what it was. It was the last call out. And if humanity had changed there might have been a slim chance. That was the absolute last call out. So we have exceeded that deadline. So now we are in the domino effect down the hill, rolling into the mud of big problems. So that's the first step of our change maker nature. And it's not that it's something we need to go around thinking about and having this kind of complete depressive, oh, what the fuck am I going to do with the world that's collapsing around me? This is where we begin to change our psychology and the way we view things, and learn the skills of compartmentalization, where we focus at the task at hand. This is the only thing that's good with the spatial awareness of the male Y chromosome, is that you learn to work with the space in front of you, and there you change as much as you can. And then you take another space and another space and another space. You take it one step at a time. And that takes practice. And many of you that are idealists and have this mental processing, I want to change the world, but I'm not really ready to do what it takes because I don't really have the guts and the balls to do it. You are in for a steep learning curve where you need to learn to really work with yourself. That's why I keep pushing you to say, well, try to implement 1 hour of exercise every day. And as much so you sweat, really sweat, and you get exhausted and you feel that you have really utilized your body. And then try to expand it into 2 hours just for a period of time, because all depending on how much work you have got, there are of course limitations to how much you can do, but how much exercise can you implement every day? As well as your diet. How much energy work can you actually perform every day so you can cut down on the amount of food you have to consume? Because if you are exercising correctly, you are actually getting rid of the fourth dimensional parasites, because they don't like exercise. They don't like you to be effective. And if you change your food and you learn to work with your food, you will get rid of some of the underworld energies, because it's in the vegetables too. They are grown in the ground. Think +1 + 1 gives 2, right? So they are a part of some of the molecular state of vegetables. And that's why, you know me, I've been singing the song for a long time. I prefer things I have to pluck from a plant or from a tree, so I don't disturb the plant, because they are transformative themselves, and killing the entire plant to eat it is ethically not correct. That's not the way it was supposed to be. So if we have plants that are continuing renewing themselves to following the different seasons and grow back up and then give off fruit, the fruit of the tree, the fruit of the plant, that is what we should eat. And we will have plenty of proteins and plenty of things to choose from there. We don't need all of this extra, all sorts of weird stuff which humans are in the habit of, because they are still being driven by their desire, pleasure, seeking parasites. So they want to have pleasure in their mouth, and they want to have pleasure in their vaginas and in their dicks and wherever. They want pleasure everywhere in their body. So this is not why we eat. We eat food to transform and to produce energy. So it's just a matter of, you can teach your body to not be desire driven when it comes to food. And that's also a lesson that we need to learn, because as we are getting fewer and fewer options of food, we might as well just learn, what do we really need to produce that will give us what we need, the nutrition, the sustenance, the sense of feeling healthy and fit and full. And then how can we transform our energy system and our physical form so we don't need to absorb that same amount of food to get the same amount of energy? Because we can do that when we link up to the original reality network. Then we become part of the world and transformation of energy. So if we transform energy, the food we put into ourselves will then do its job within us, and then it will have a double purpose that will give off more energy to our physical form and our energy system. So this is also important to take into consideration. So there are solutions, but we have to work for them. And that's where I want to put us into 2 other analogies I want to put in here, because many of you say, well, it's the aliens. They can just go away and then we'll have it all. Hear the 5-year-old in my voice here. Okay. So let me explain why that's not so simple. And I want to teach you a little bit about yourself. Many of you live in America, you live in Australia, or you live in places where you don't belong. And you say, well, I do. I'm born here. No, your ancestors are not. You are an invading human species in a country that's not yours. It belongs to the Native Americans. It belongs to the indigenous people of Australia. You came by ship. You came invading, colonizing, killing, slaying, raping, taking something that was not yours. That's your ancestral heritage. You do not belong in America. You do not belong in Australia. So what would be the rightful thing to do if we are if the aliens are to do what we should do, right? We should leave. You should leave America. Go back to Europe. All of you should leave Australia. Go back to Europe. Give back the country to the Native Americans and the Native Australians. Off you go. And there, think that one through. Well, we can't have that many people in Europe, right? And where should you go? And how should you live? And we don't need that amount of workforce. And you feel the panic? Right. Good, because that's how the aliens feel. Not I'm kind of, oh, you poor little aliens, you have no place to go, because they made it that way. They made that choice themselves. They came here, they colonized, they're just as fucked as we are. They are fucked on the other side of it, making a series of very, very bad decisions, coming here either as refugees or coming here as part of the invading Draco colonization factions and becoming overlords and what have you. So they have rooted here and they have no place to go. They've changed so much to be able to exist here, as you have if you live in America or Australia. You are now, per definition, Australian or American, but you are still by bloodline and by origin European, and you were seeded into Europe. Your ancestry was seeded into Europe, so you technically have no jurisdictional power either in Australia or in America. So that's the problem for many of us when we begin to claim our jurisdiction, is that you're technically a visitor in a country that's not yours, and you're living on racial grids that belongs to other nations and other types of physical forms, and your racial grid is in Europe. Big problem, right? So when we talk about really regaining our power and our structure to do things, you need to be able to reconnect to the original jurisdiction, the original grid work of your ancestry. And that also comes into when we talk about people going to Africa and trying to solve solutions down there. They don't have any real power. It's not just because the Africans are kind of saying, yeah, you're white man, woman, you come here and you're trying to do something down here which you're not allowed to do because you just want to colonize us. And we've been here before, and you come here, you feel you should be human and we're subhumans and you fuck off, right? It's not just about that. It's also about the jurisdictional power and the jurisdictional right and the jurisdictional ability to pull in energies of our ancestral lineages, as we know with the lineages in the more native-oriented countries that remember the original fourth cycle and their ancestry back to Atlantis. They drew their power from their ancestors. And if we are to do that, we need to be in Europe, right? And just to put that one in, Britain used to be connected to Europe during the second or the last ice age when the ice melted. We were under the ice, we were connected, but as the water rose, we got separated. So Britain and Denmark are connected. Britain does belong to Europe. Everything else is imaginary. So the whole Brexit kind of thing is just bullshit. It's divided by distortion or water, if you like. It's not divided by grids and energy. Okay, so that's the first step. So we can't just kick the aliens out. The second step is, if you really think about it, okay, if you were to leave America, all of you, out, you don't belong there. All white people out of America, all Mexicans out of America, all Africans out of America, everybody else then but the natives. Leave it to the Native Americans. What's left of the tribes, the 12 nations, let them take over their country as they used to beforehand. And then you look into, well, how many, and I'm not going to point fingers or anything, because they've had a very, very hard time and they have not had the great opportunities either. And it's been enormously difficult. And any civilization will, after so long, after so much torment, after so much suppression, similarly as we're seeing it with the indigenous people of Australia, and based upon a fourth cycle insectoid, very close to nature, mythical, shamanistic, tribal, not particularly developed type of awareness, which is fine and good 5,000, 10,000 years ago, but not so suitable for our world as we have it today. They have a very, very, very steep learning curve. And at the same time, they are having a distortion rate that is beyond, and of course, because things have been done to them, but also because their DNA and their genetics are connected to some pretty severe older levels of our fourth cycle. And they have not transformed this. They have tried it, but they did not succeed particularly well, because they were the groups that were seated in under the Dracos and under the colonizing races. So they were never supposed to have their freedom, okay? Not that we are either here in Europe, but the fifth cycle races have a different later addition, which is not completely clear yet because we have not activated the fifth cycle. So therefore I cannot see all of our flaws yet. But as we get further into that, I will point them out so we can work with them. But right now the fourth cycle flaws are becoming clear because the ramification of what has not been done with the fourth cycle is now beginning to bite us all in our asses. Okay. So we're having the indigenous people, no matter where they are on the planet, they are not in a particularly good shape. They have not really been educated much, and reverting to the old shamanistic ways, even though they tried to romanticize it during the 80s and the 90s and tried to get us all back into the good old fourth cycle shamanistic, being part of the god, mythical guardian entity realm of the old world order forces. Well, that did not particularly succeed, right? And there comes a big price with that one, because most of these things are connected to the underworld. So they might appear beautiful and shiny in the artificial fourth dimension or as part of the astral plane. But when they are connected to some pretty severe elementals that are bordering into some pretty nasty energies in the older realms of our planet. So no, it's not, the answer is never to go back and camp there. The answer is to clear the past, learn from the past, and then begin moving forward to change the future. That's always the answer. Never to go back and camp in something that already has proven itself to be failed. It's not just because they got colonized. It's not just because of that. We've seen cultures long before even before the Mayans were infected by all sorts of Western types of diseases, right? So we saw that one as well. But long before that, we have had a long range of different types of indigenous cultures that were high cultures that succumbed, even though it's easy to say they succumbed whenever the Western world, as we had with the Raja kingdom in India, they succumbed because the Brits came to India and onward and so forth. We could say the same as in China, but it doesn't really add up. We can more say, well, perhaps they were on the brink of collapsing, and that's why it was so easy for the invaders to come in. And that's the history I have of our system as well. When the Dracos came, we were not in a good shape. So that's why we couldn't make the resistance that were necessary. A thriving kingdom cannot be overtaken, because a thriving kingdom would fight back and the people would fight back, and there would be the resources to do the war and fight off the invading forces. So what does a kingdom do when it is on its knees? Well, it takes the hand that is given, so to speak, even if it comes from someone who's a little bit devious and you're kind of thinking, yeah, it's probably not a good idea, but we need the solutions here. And we are on the same brink here again with the climate changes and everything that's going to happen here. Right now, around here and there is this fighting, trying to proclaim some kind of sovereignty. But in the end, there will be, as always with humans, they will take the easiest solutions and they will take the hand that is feeding them with whatever will prove to be some kind of solution, because they don't have the skills and they don't have the stamina to do the long, hard way it takes to get back on your feet. And we're seeing that with the alien factions as well. They've done the same stupidity. So it's all over this universal structure. And that's why in the Souls of Humanity went back to the root of it, where I kind of say, yeah, we kind of created that problem with having the issue in the holographic metaverse, where we already had the laggards. They were already showing the signs of different forms of dysfunctional genetic composition that went with the D13 collective. So why even give them a whole universe where they can try and catch up when they're already showing all the signs of not being able to catch up? Do you think a whole new universe will help their foundational issues with their core consciousness units? Do you think a new energetic setting will support them and put in technology and that will change the problem, when the problem is the consciousness units themselves? It's in their entire structure. Just my point of view. You can disagree. You are allowed. So that's kind of how I see it. Well, the root is there, but it's not just about creating a new scenario and then they'll be all better. So let's play that in kind of now here as just doing something that has nothing to do with humans, because that touches ground with ethics, right? So let's do and we can't really call them that primitive. We're not allowed to do so. So let's do another scenario where you don't get all the hiccups. We are having animals born in the zoo. Okay? They are born in the zoo. They are used to being fed. They are used to being around humans. They're used to get water. They're used to get everything. And yeah, they're confined. They might dream, of running out on the great hills in the wilderness, but they get everything they need. Everything is given to them, right? Yeah, we don't like them being in captivity. They should be out in the wild, but they're born in captivity. They don't know anything else. So we could do that. We could give them a greater enclosure, which we have done here in Denmark as well. And that one is definitely give them more grounds to be on, give them a more realistic habitat, create a nicer prison, right? That's the first step. And that's some of the, when we're talking about the more quote unquote benevolent races, that's what they've done with the fifth cycle version of our civilization that goes with what we would call quote unquote the Western culture. And I'm not keen on that word. So let us just say a culture that is founded on the principles of what we call a modern democracy, not an ancient democracy, because that was not really democratic, because that was just the nobility that were democratic. And we have had these issues up here in Europe as well, where women had no right to vote and the poor had no right to vote, etc., etc. So we can't really base it on democracy either. So I don't know what we should call it, because all of it has its negative side to it, right? Everything is a polarity. Nothing is just pure good. So I don't know what to call it, but let's call it the last type of seated inhumans. Probably that's very vague, but that will cover all colors and all races, because it's not just the white skinned races that are the fifth cycle. There are definitely fifth cycle humans with all variations of coloration. So let us just do the latest seeded in fifth cycle races that were supposed to bridge us into the fifth cycle. So that's a specific bunch, and it goes with a specific type of DNA that allows us to grow out of the XY chromosomal features, merge these two with each other, and generate the fifth chromosome, which you have heard about, the inner wedding or heros gamos, the holy matrimony of the male and the female energy within each human. And everyone is thinking, oh, I just need to, as Carl Gustav Jung said, you need to integrate your male features, and the male needs to integrate his female features, and then we will meld and blend and become this very expanded type of human. It's nothing to do with these low-level types of psychological exercises. It has to do with our chromosomal features that goes with a very specific advanced gene sequence, modification process, where you transform everything that's connected to the fourth cycle that goes with the X chromosome, and transform everything that has to do with the third cycle that goes with the Y chromosome. The Y chromosome is technically what constitutes what we understand as the humanoid male type of consciousness in form, and the X chromosome is constituting what we call the progressive female type of consciousness into what we call the female form. But this is, of course, highly distorted and has been meddled with and destroyed to its components due to the hijacker program. So we can't really say that's the easy peasy simple way to go around it. But the X chromosome was the high chromosome of the fourth cycle, which is why males have it as well. But the third cycle is the Y chromosome, and there were specific species that developed that Y chromosome, and that's the main chromosome that led to the fall of Atlantis, which is why many males in our society that has a strong Y chromosome has a tendency to have the dark one energies in them, the dark Atlantean energies, a kind of part of their chromosomal makeup. And then you have the little insectoid males with an XY chromosome, but their X is stronger, but they're typically these blonde-haired, red-haired, Celtic lineage type of guys, little insectoids, not particularly tall, very skinny. You see them as the little nerds, the ones that are riding the bikes, they're doing the tours, right? The ones that are the jockeys, that little male figure kind of thing with small hands and the little insectoid things. And they're kind of cute and what have you, but they're very aggressive, very territorial. There's a lot of issue with them. So that's the bridging point of that insectoid into the maleness of our population. And then you have the taller ones that are gorgeously looking, but most of them are womanizers. They are what you call Don Juan. They can't really root. These are the slugs, right? So that's the X chromosome in males not working particularly well. And it's not working particularly well in females either, because we have the insectoid females, we have the slug females, and we have the breeder females, and we have I can't exist without a male females. So it's that X chromosome not really living up to its potential. And I know I'm painting a very harsh picture here. Many of you will kind of feel a little bit offended, saying, hey, Why are you looking at things like that? That's not how it's supposed to be. But just to point out some of the issues, we can also point out all the goodness of things. We say, oh yeah, we have love, we have relationships, we have partnerships. And I'll just say, yeah, that's not what the X chromosome and tribal awareness is all about. So you can't really present anything from me inside the base program that kind of hits the top level of what we're supposed to be as a humanity. So therefore, let's just play out the grand picture and say, stop trying to find the goodness. We can always find the goodness, but then you latch onto that one, you cling onto that and say, no, I have that, so therefore I'm good. And then you stop looking at what you need to develop, what you need to change. It's better to have the balls and the guts and the strength and the diligence and the vitality to go in and look at all the flaws and look at them right in the eye, look the fucking demon in her and his eyes and say, I see you and I am going to change you because I have the will, the stamina, the gut and the balls, and I'm all in and I'm going to get your sorry ass so you will never ever have control of me. That's where we need to go. That's the changemaker mentality. Look things in the eye, see them as they truly are, and then transform them. Stop pretending you are so fucking good and also fucking beautiful. Yes, you are. You are fucking good. You are fucking beautiful. But that's not the point. The point is when we talk energy system and higher levels of everything you are not pristine. You're not perfect. In your human form, oh yeah, I see plenty of nice people. But when the shit hits the fan and the going gets tough, there I see what people are. It crawls out of their face, little weird insectoid, scavenger, mantis thinking, all panicky. And 1 minute I'm the one that knows everything. And then I just push them into their true slug-oriented desire system. And then suddenly I'm a thief and I'm all sorts of weird stuff, right? I get the hit of that one. And I've seen it so many times now. And to be honest, this is not where we get to go when you begin to follow the impulses of whatever's possessing you. Sorry about that. Kind of all of you, but sitting there with your hair back, being completely offended. And I get that. And it's not that I am pure and I am good and I am fine. I'm battling all of these things as much as you are. And that's where we are. That's how we're going to navigate as change makers. If we think we are the answer to all the problem of humanity, we will fail tremendously on two levels. One, we're not the answers to all the trouble of humanity. Nobody is. The collective is. Two, we have been conditioned in so many ways so we don't have the right skill set. We have lived in this enclosure, in captivity for so long that we have absolutely no idea what the wilderness is. And that's where I wanted to go back to the animals. So we'll go back to that one in a second. And fourthly, we are up against factions that have colonized this for so long. And if we are to become anywhere near what they are, and if they are to work together with us, because that's the scenario I want to go back to as well, then we have to change tremendously. But I will continue that one in the next video. Thank you.